glory, we need loyalty. Presence to our Savior who granted us the freedom. Allegiance to the hero who bowed the lonely diablo. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in our nation, flowing with earth and holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonian, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation. Ambazonian, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our need. And your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation.
Fellow compatriots, good evening. This evening, I stand before you to talk about the episode that we've just gone through as a people. We have just come from a battle, scarred. And I would like to use this opportunity to extend my condolences to all of us. All of us, because all of us are affected. You are affected just like I am affected. All of us have lost friends, we've lost relatives, we've lost compatriots. Over 100 of us have been killed from the figures that we are getting and counting. Thousands are affected. We are also aware that the regime has gone out there in the still of the night and has killed and maimed thousands, hundreds of our citizens, abducted many of our boys and girls, and raped many of our women. But we must remember that the regime is exactly where we wanted the regime to be. We have continued to say that the regime has got only two tools in its toolkit. It is corruption and violence. Over the past 10 months, the regime has used every kind of corrupt means in the book to try and corrupt us, from trying to sow seeds of divide and rule, which have failed. We knew that after corruption, violence will follow. We also know that after these two tools, the regime has got no other tools in its toolkit. Therefore, during this period, when we are overcoming violence, we should know that the regime is at the very end of its tether. This is what we call the kicks, the last kicks of a dying horse. But we need to also ask the question, what excuse do you give for sending soldiers in the middle of the night to shoot defenseless men, defenseless women, defenseless children, rape women in their bedrooms? Many of those who were affected by the last carnage by this regime were not even out on the streets protesting. They were in their bedrooms. They were in their houses. Old women, as old, grandmothers as old as 80, were pulled out of their houses and shot in the forehead. What excuse do you give as a regime? And that is why I say the regime is exactly where we wanted it, in a tight corner where it has exposed itself. Many would have said, you need to give this regime an opportunity for dialogue. We need to be as peaceful as possible. We need to ensure that we stay within the ambits of the law. We did all of that. And still, the regime sent its boys to go out and kill and maim our people. That comes as no surprise. But it should come as no surprise also that we are going through what we are going. We knew right from the very beginning that this struggle was not going to be a walk in the park. There is no illusion, and there should be no illusion, that this is going to be easy. We have incurred casualties. There is a very strong possibility that we will incur more casualties. We have paid a price. There is a very strong possibility that we might pay some more. Freedom is not free, and sometimes you have to pay through sweat, toil, and blood to get to freedom. but we must continue to stay resolute and ask ourselves, do we want to give up now, or do we want to take this journey all the way to its logical end? Like we keep saying, we must push this thing until we reach the finish line. And to reach the finish line, we must stay resolute as a people. We must continue to believe and know that we are on the right path. We have stayed within the ambit of the law. We have maintained that we are open for transparent and honest dialogue, and that we want to be able to see that our people are respected. Now, the regime has been badly exposed, and we now know, and the world knows, the international community knows, that this regime has never operated based on good faith. That was demonstrated over the past few days. It has no intention to find solutions to the problem. That is why the only solution it knows is to resort to violence. Now, we are vindicated as a people to show the world that after 56 years of trying everything that we can, we've been patient, we've tried to understand, we've tried to stay in fraternity with our brothers, we've tried to build a country together. All of that has failed. We have tried to swallow our pride, and all of that has failed. We have been vindicated as a people, and the testimony is there for all to see. Now, moving forward, we need to start thinking about how do we ensure that we do not lose track of what we started and where we are going. And in order to do that, we need to remember that the Governing Council and the leadership has been working night and day. In fact, the Governing Council has been meeting on a daily basis to ensure that it continues to evaluate the situation and to provide guidance and to provide direction to our people. Many of the leaders of the Governing Council, of the leadership, Health and Social Services, Home Affairs Department, they've been liaising with our people back at home. They've been liaising with some of you back at home, and they've been giving you consolation, giving you advice, but also giving you a sense of direction. We also know that the chairman of the Governing Council has not been sleeping, because he has been spending a lot of time consulting with the international community and ensuring that the international community pays heed to our problems and to our situation. It is for that reason that we now see many countries, many governments are beginning to talk about our situation. Many of them are beginning to point to the human rights abuses, and many of them are beginning to ask the regime to pay attention and to stop the violent killing and maiming of our people. We have also seen that the United Nations has spoke out very strongly against the activities of the regime. The chairman has been busy consulting widely, and we have seen the fruits of his work. And I would like to use this opportunity to inform the House that the chairman will be coming in the next few days to address the nation and to give us exact steps in terms of where we have to go. So we must stay resolute. We must not lose faith. We must continue to be focused on ensuring that we get to the finish line. Now, before we move ahead, it is important, and as part of this address, that we carry out an assessment of where we have come from and where we are going. Now, our assessment as the Governing Council over the past few days has demonstrated a number of issues. The first is that there is no doubt to ourselves, to Yaoundé, and to the rest of the world what our people want. When our people stepped out on the 22nd of September in their millions and marched across the villages and the cities of the world, both internally and externally, to state very clearly what their intentions were, there was no doubt anymore in the minds of anybody what our people want. We want our independence. And as a result of the expression of this desire to restitute our independence, this was cemented on the 1st of October when our people went out and celebrated the rebirth of our independence. There is therefore no doubt that the past few weeks have actually cemented unity amongst our people. What used to be a fragmented people, thanks to the divide and rule tactics of the regime, has only helped to bring us together as a people. What used to be some of our compatriots who were in doubt has only helped to bring our compatriots together to be one people and to be one person as Southern Cameroonians. But most of all, we have sent out a message to Yaoundé and to the rest of the world that we will never be disrespected again. Moving forward, we have to be respected as a people. As part of the assessment, we have demonstrated also that Yaoundé has got no answers. No answers because over 10 months, in spite of the show of good faith, Yaoundé has not once been able to demonstrate that it can provide a solution to the problem. And like we have said, it can only use corruption and violence. We have overcome corruption. We have overcome fear. We are in the process of overcoming violence. We have also forced even the United Nations and the international community to recognize that there are two sides to this story. Not too long ago, some wanted us to believe and wanted the world to believe that Cameroon is one and indivisible. But the United Nations sent a clear statement to Mr. Biya telling him that a solution must be sought and that the two sides must come together and dialogue and look for a way out and look for a way that will suit each other, including the fact that we want to separate. We have also forced the international community to start talking very strongly to the Yaoundé regime, something that the international community has avoided for a long time. Based on this assessment, we have learned that we as a people cannot go back. We must continue to push forward. We have demonstrated to Yaoundé that negotiation is inevitable, that the only way we can move forward is for Yaoundé to negotiate, to talk, to dialogue. But we have demonstrated most of all that as Southern Cameroonians, we have seen the rebirth of our nation. Southern Cameroon has been reborn. And as from the 1st of October, we saw a new nation reborn. And from the 1st of October, we will start to operate as a country and as a government. The chairman will be making pronouncement on the way forward in terms of that, the government and the governing council in terms of how it will function. But at the same time, there are some lessons learned. We have learned that Yaoundé cannot be trusted. Was never trusted, cannot be trusted. That is a lesson we've learned. And moving forward, we have learned also that we must continue to be resolute, but even more, we have to be careful. We have to be careful because while we were sleeping, that we could go out as citizens of the world, but most of all as citizens of our country in our own territory and demonstrate peacefully and celebrate our Independence Day. While some, and Yaoundé, was getting some to demonstrate peacefully in Yaoundé, whatever they were demonstrating, we can go back to our beds and be slaughtered by Mr. Biya's talks. How do you justify and defend the activities of a government, of a regime that sends soldiers? Soldiers are meant to protect the territorial integrity of a country, to protect the citizens. Policemen and gendarmes are supposed to protect the citizens. How do you send soldiers and gendarmes to go into the bedrooms of students and murder them in their sleep and shoot them point blank? We have demonstrated, and the lesson we are learning out of this is that as a people, we can no longer go to bed with both eyes closed. Moving forward, we must learn to sleep and ensure and know that we have got somebody out there purporting to be a government that can slaughter us in our sleep. That means that we have been left with no choice but to learn to defend ourselves. Moving forward, we also need to be sure that we identify very clearly who is behind this carnage. The tendency has been to talk about the government of La République du Cameroun. We need to start breaking it down to specifics. Who is behind the carnage? Now, let me start to break it down nicely. You will remember that less than a week ago, Mr. Issa Chiroma, the spokesperson for the government of La République du Cameroun, came out on television and said very clearly that in the coming days, in less than a week, you will see what we will do to these people. And we saw what they did to our people. We should hold Mr. Issa Chiroma responsible as one of them. We also know from our intelligence that Mr. Lele Afrique, resident in Bamenda, as one of the colonial governors, alerted all the people of his tribe, alerted them and told them to leave Bamenda and the northwest as quickly as possible in anticipation of what was going to come. That tells you that what happened was not a mere act of territorial integrity. It was a planned act of genocide against our people. We know also that Mr. Okalia Bilai, resident in Boya as the colonial governor, made a statement to the effect that our people are dogs, and dogs, by his culture, are beings that you can shoot at will, and it means nothing. And therefore, he participated in giving the orders for our people to be slaughtered in Boya and its environs. We know that behind all of this, there is a certain Belinga Ebutu, who has been pulling the strings together with Mr. Laurent Esso. As the Governing Council and as the people of Southern Cameroons, we want to state very categorically that these individuals are going to be held responsible at a very high level of genocide. And why do I speak of genocide? Last week, and over the past 2 weeks, the chairman of the Governing Council, Sisiku Ayoktabe, has alerted the world, has alerted the international community, everywhere he went, about the possibility of an impending genocide against our people. We also know that Barrister Akeremuna wrote very strongly, mentioning and alerting the world to the possibility of a genocide. We know also that Nijon Frundi alerted the world about the possibility of a genocide. While these gentlemen from Mr. Issa Chiroma and the others alerted everybody, including their citizens, that they were going to carry out a genocide, they went out of their way and they did carry out a genocide. And now we have the international community, international non-governmental organizations, international governments are beginning to say that, in fact, there was an act of genocide carried out in Southern Cameroons. As a result, and as a people, we must seek to self-preserve. It is our responsibility to protect each other, to be our brother's keeper. And as the steps that the Governing Council is making and has made over these past few days has been to fast-track the deployment of the Southern Cameroon's ambassador to the African Union, Ambassador Eyambe Elias, who has already left for Addis. Over the next few days, we will be seeing, over the next few days and weeks, Ambassador Eyambe will be knocking on the doors of the 54 members of the African Union to ensure that at the level of the African Union, we put our case and get them to start looking and putting an eye on this regime. We also know that at the level of the international community, pressure is being brought to bear on the regime of Yaoundé, especially within the Commonwealth, recognizing that Yaoundé was never and is not a member of the Commonwealth. Therefore, we need, as part of the action that we've put in place, start to affirm our statehood by being proud of our flag and singing our national anthem on a daily basis. We need to also, as the Governing Council, talk about the return to schools. The Governing Council has talked long and wide and deep about what we want to do with regards to return to school. And the one thing that has come to the fore very strongly is the fact that as a responsible Governing Council, as responsible parents, as responsible citizens, it is important that our children are educated, not go to school. Our children get education. What we seek for our children is not going to school, but education. And as a result, we are committed to children going back to school. However, given the present atmosphere of insecurity and the fact that our towns and villages are littered with Turks who have been given the sole mandate to maim, shoot, and rape our people, the children must continue to stay back at home as the Governing Council decides what the next steps will be and exactly when children will go to school. Now, we have to commit to the security of our people and also commit to the fact that we had embarked on a journey, and that journey will have to continue. We will have to stay on track. And that means we also have to address the issue of the ghost towns. The Governing Council has thought long and deep about the ghost towns. And as of now, the Governing Council continues to maintain ghost towns once a week for Mondays until further notice and until further instruction comes from the Governing Council. Now, let us remind us all moving forward that paid a price. the price of being full, the price of fraternal, the price of wanting to build a country inclusive of our brothers east of the Mongo. Out of this price, we have learned lessons, some of which I've just elaborated, but we have also scored some victories and some gains. We also need to know that as we talk about the call for dialogue, many have sought to dialogue and they paid price. Let us start with Fongoji Dinka, who started some 35 years ago to talk about the fact that we need to talk and dialogue about the situation of our people. He paid the price by going to jail and by being incarcerated and everything, including his very, very comfortable livelihood. We also know that Albert Mukong did the same, believed with this regime and failed. He paid the price with 7 years in jail. We know, and others like him also paid the price, either through the brutality of the government, suffering exile, and also having to lose everything. Learned and we know about the case of Chief Yamba, who was incarcerated, went through a series of torture as a result of the fact that he believed that he could dialogue and he could actually exercise force of argument instead of the argument of force. And that failed because this regime does not understand of the force of argument. More recently, we had Barrister Abo Nkongo, who tried to dialogue with this regime, and the very next day, him and others were arrested, abducted by the regime, and taken to the... Out of this long litany of leaders, we do know that this regime does not understand the argument, the force of argument. The regime only understands the argument of force. Based on this, that any kind of dialogue with the regime at this moment, on a bilateral basis, is a waste of time. Leaders. It is for that reason that the Governing Council has made very clear that any dialogue and any negotiation will only take place outside of the territory and in the presence and with the facilitating third party. The Governing Council has called on various international bodies, from ECOWAS to the African Union, the United Nations, the European Union, and others, to come on board and help with this dialogue. That is the only way we are going to have dialogue. As no citizen, no compatriot has the authority to negotiate with the regime on a bilateral basis. No compatriot, nobody has got the right of regime in the name of an Anglophone conference. We are not Anglophones. We are Southern Cameroonians. We are Ambazonians. The Governing Council chairman has also made very clearly individuals who must sit around the table when there is any kind of dialogue to take place. Some of the individuals to sit on the table include Barrister Abonkongo, Dr. Fontaine, BBC, and many others. But he has also enumerated and made very clear members of the Governing Council must be part of that dialogue, which will be led by the chairman of the Governing Council. Any other individual who goes out there and seeks to negotiate on behalf of our mandate of the people, and that person will be thrown under the bus. As a result, we need to start thinking about what we do with the immediate in the clamor over the past few days. Our people have been killed. Many of them are lying in hospitals. Many of them have got broken limbs, and many are displaced and hiding in some of the most forlorn places. Number one, we will take the next few days to mourn our deaths. That is the honorable thing to do for their sake, as martyrs of our freedom, but also because that is our culture and our tradition. The Department of Social Services is at the moment putting together a task force that will see what kind of support will be given to the family of the victims, as well as those who are still suffering from injuries incurred as a result of the brutalities of the regime. So there will be action to try and support the families of the victims. But most of all, as our we must take into account the fact that we have to compile data. We have to count, make sure that we count every single missing compatriot, every reason. We need to ensure that we take down the name of anybody who has been abducted by the regime. We need to supply this to the government. Over the next few days, the Department of Home Affairs will be sending to you a toll-free number to which you are going to send the names and numbers and identity of our compatriots who are missing, who may have lost their lives, or who have been abducted by the regime. This will be compiled and will be used, and the law firm Foley and Hoke, which has been pushing and advocating for us at the international level. But also, these names will compile to start holding those individuals accountable. We should not forget either individuals who have orchestrated the killing and the maiming of our people. There are other officers, policemen, soldiers who have actually carried the act. We are asking our compatriots, our friends in the military, in the police, send us their identity. We will want to ensure that we go beyond the prosecution of a government and start individuals who have carried out this act. Once we start getting their names, their pictures, and their faces, we will take it and start to push to ensure that they face some kind of tribunal. We are also aware that in the course of this carnage, the regime has gone out there and has property. In fact, the regime has spent more time destroying properties over the past few days after having killed hundreds of our people. Mr. Issa Chiroma made it very clear that his response to our television station, the SCBC, would be to prove to the world that the SCBC is legal. And his proof was to ensure that he goes out there and destroy the antennas in people's houses. We must take count of all the properties that have been destroyed, from the windows that have been broken, the cars which have been either stolen or broken, or motorcycles which the military have used to travel through our different counties and villages to shoot and kill our people. Take count of all of this, document everything to the Governing Council. Action will have to be taken. What? We need to take ourselves up. Every now and then when you fall, you don't fall and stay down. You rise up and you continue. And as you run the race, every now and then you will stumble. Pick yourself up and continue until you cross the finish line. As a result, we have to continue to compile whatever information we have regarding the situation of the past few days. Take pictures. Do cut them. If you don't have access to the internet, keep them somewhere safe in time to be sent to the rest of the world so that the world can know what. Send us the names of the SDOs, the governors, the commandant, the brigade, and so on, who have been at the back and at the very back end of these acts against our people. But there is one thing that we all have to agree to, that as a way forward, we cannot turn back. The option, and turning back is not an option. Therefore, we have to continue and have to keep moving forward. Forward, what do we do? Civil disobedience is the weapon that we have used against this regime. It is a weapon that we used without carrying arms, without any weapons, without anything. We did it in grand style, and we have defeated the regime this far. We must continue to carry out civil disobedience as part and parcel of the struggle that we are carrying out. Disobedience will be to ensure that from now henceforth, we do not pay any taxes, not to the colonial governors or representatives of the regime. Payments will be made to the local councils. No taxes or payments will be made to any of the officials who are sent by the regime. As landlords, that we start to identify all the uniformed men in our houses and ensure that we do not let them continue to rent or let our houses. We must send them out. Every single representative of the regime will have to be kicked out. Civil disobedience will also not respect the toll gates where money is collected, but where our roads are not repaired. We will continue to remember that the demands that we had stand, and those demands include the immediate and unconditional release of our brothers and patriots who had been jailed way back, as far back as October last year, but most of all, the thousands of it over the past few days. As a result, the Governing Council is now in plans for what will have to take place to ensure that we push the regime to release our boys unconditionally. Some of these boys are in jail. They are bleeding, suffering from pain, and they are receiving no medical treatment. We call on the international community to put so that they can get treatment and also go back to their families. We are demanding also from the government the immediate demilitarization of our territory. We demand that of all the Turks that have been sent with weapons by the regime. And like we have continued to say, and the people of Southern Cameroons believe in peaceful resolution to conflict. And this includes dialogue. But dialogue will only be that we are proposing and insisting upon, which means it will have to take place outside of our territory, in the presence and with the mediation of a credible third party. These were the three key demands that we had on the table last week, but there is a fourth one. Individuals who were behind the crimes and who are behind the crimes perpetrated against our people will have to face the wrath of the law, both nationally and internationally. Those are the four demands that we are at the table, and the chairman will be elaborating upon them as soon as possible. Now, moving forward, what we need to start anticipating the steps and game. That is the game plan. We do know that while the world is paving the way to the 21st century, we have got a regime that continues to operate, moving backwards in the 21st century. And that is why the regime is being run by people who were born and brought up in 20th century tactics of doing things. One, let us go back to the days of the Marquis treatment that was meted against the Bassas and the Bamileke. What happened to our people over the past few days is explained back to 20th century approach to resolution of conflict. Carry out in a heavy-handed manner violence against the people, sow an atmosphere of intimidation and fear, send as a result of the intimidation carrot, and then give the carrot. So is the stick, and that our people have been taken through this period of the stick where they've been dealt a very heavy blow. We also know that the regime at the moment is now planning on the carrot, and the carrot it will call some kind of internal resolution to the problem. We know that as a result of the internal dialogue, the regime is planning some kind of cosmetic solution to the problem. If we go back to what was done to the UPC leaders, an atmosphere of intimidation was sown within the communities of the Bamileke, and then leaders were handpicked who did not represent the aspirations of the people, and shown to the world as being the people who would lead and govern. We do know these same old tricks. Based on that, we should look out and ensure that the regime does not continue to play the same games. The old tactics of the 20th century cannot work in the 21st century. What the regime fails to understand is that our people are far more educated than the people, including ours, cities. What the regime forgets is that our people have been pushed to the peripheries to the point where they have built a powerful diaspora. The regime ignores and continues to ignore is the fact that our people have known the kind of unity that was never known before. That was demonstrated on the 22nd of September as well as the 1st of October this year. As a result, we have got no choice. Based on the actions of the regime, we have got no choice but to start calling on the international community and drawing the attention of the international. Our boys, our men, our women, our sisters cannot continue to let themselves be shot at point blank, killed in their sleep, abducted in their thousands, and jailed in cells that are so small that our people are. As a result, we have got no choice and no option but to learn to defend ourselves. We are therefore calling on everybody, all our community members, to start being vigilant, to start community little groups, instill ways of communication beyond the social media, ensure that you tell your local authority, and in this case, as part of our civil disobedience, we will ensure that we do not report to any of the members or the member, Mr. Bia. We want to ensure that from now henceforth, our people are administered by themselves, and the only authority that can come beyond that of our chiefs and our coming from the governing council. We must learn to be vigilant, defend our, continue to document, continue to maintain the rapport with the international community, not forget that we've got a strong diaspora community that is working very hard and around the clock to ensure that we support our people. Continue to remember that the governing council has not slept a wink, but that the members of the governing council are meeting on a daily basis and ensuring and looking for ways to support our people back home. We must continue to remember that as victims, as survivors, and as people, we will stand with each other, and support will be coming from our brothers and sisters from across the world. Over the past few days, the different countries, the 13 countries of Europe that form the governing council, those in Africa and the Americas, have come together, and they will be constituting and putting together the means and the ways to ensure them. We will ensure that support is given to those in hospitals. We must continue to remember that regardless of what happens, we must stay the course. And lastly, we must have just defeated the Yaoundé regime. What the Yaoundé regime did over the past few days were the last kicks for dying us. After that kick, and even as we go through this dark period, we mustn't forget that at the end of the tunnel, there is the light. We must remain resolute and strong, and we must continue to forge forward. There is no doubt that while this journey might be long, the journey will soon come to an end. Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Glory, we the Ambazonians pledge our loyalty. Praise to our Savior who granted us the freedom. Our legends to the hero who bowed the lonely Diablo. Glory to glory, we rise and never to fall. Here in our nation, flowing with earth and holy. Glory, glory, glory to the Father for making you a nation, a joy forevermore. Ambazonia, land of freedom, you shall live in plenty, meeting our need, and your children shall be like the stars above. The Most High God being the watchman of this nation. Ambazonia, land of freedom. this nation.
To commence the commemoration of Ambazonian independence.
Amazonia, oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Dr. Njombe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
My brother, Dr. Njombe, what do you have to tell people who are still on their way? You're already here, and what's going on?
The excitement is high. The people should come so fast so that we can start celebrating, because the day 24 hours is too small. And I wish the people back home success in whatever endeavor they are engaging themselves in. They should celebrate the day. This is the day all Southern Cameroonians, both at home and in the diaspora, should rejoice. And we thank God Almighty for the great work He has blessed Southern Cameroonians this day.
You couldn't say more, Doctor. That's absolutely true. We have with us here our pastor all the way from Pretoria, a word to the Ambazonians. I mean from Devon, sorry, all the way from Devon.
Yeah.
Any word to the Ambazonians, Pastor?
Thank you so much, brother. It's an honor, it's a privilege. I'm so elated, I'm so happy. I can't express my joy for this day today. This day today, it's a new birth. It's like a new birth, you know. It's like a marriage day. It's like it's every kind of beautiful event that you can ever think of, you know. And I don't have words to express because I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I have lived to see this day, to declare our independence, to restore it and celebrate it. So I'm so elated, and my heart goes to the people back home who are doing a great job. They have defied all odds. They have defied fear, has said his prayers, and they are standing up like one man. I just want to say thank you, and God bless us as we take this country forward to a greater height, to a greater destination.
Thank you so much, Pastor. I mean, you mean business.
My brothers and sisters, the beg una, we as we come for years, so we kind of cry this guy will not be the governing council. I go back when I say, una wait, una listen for wait the leader they go put together, they go tell we make we do about the die. I will sure with the mommy, they will also work with them for back for find out wait till they happen, because will not be just she don't wait me to take forever. And I will advise every single person, say, every leader owe you the responsibility to talk to you. If you be hurt and you want to hear something, pick up your phone, call your leader, ask them, say, wait till they happen. No run for groups, the vex, the cosh people,